Well, Melissa Urban, how the hell are you?
Hello, Jason Burke. I've been great. And it's really good to see you again. Last time I saw you was Expo West in March. And I feel like we at least get that once a year touch point, but it's great to have touch point number 2 this year.
I got to be honest, I really miss the Whole30 conference. I really miss gathering everyone together in one place. I understand how much work is involved in putting something like that together, but I kind of miss it.
I mean, we could just do that. We could just do like an offsite and just invite who we want to invite. And as long as we talk shop, it's a business expense. We could just do that.
I'm in. If you want to do that, we'll talk offline. Let's make something like that happen. I'm totally in. Good. I love it. So look, you're really, really busy. I admire all of the things that you do and continue to do. And I've either known you or known of you probably since the beginning of this journey that you've been on with Whole30. In fact, I want to say I was at an event, a paleo-ish kind of event, 2012 or 13, maybe before that.
Yeah.
And there was this thing called the Whole9.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly. So, will you just indulge me for a minute? Like, take me back for a second. Like, when did you start this whole thing? Like, when did this whole journey for you begin?
Well, okay. So it started, I guess there are so many different origin points we could talk about. We could talk about my drug addiction and recovery. And in my recovery, I started exercising and eating well, and exercise led me to CrossFit. But it really, I guess, started with CrossFit. So I started doing CrossFit in 2006. I dove in super hard, really fast. I owned a CrossFit gym back in New Hampshire. I was writing for the CrossFit Journal. I was traveling and teaching the CrossFit kettlebell certifications. I was traveling with some of the gymnastics certifications. I was all in. I was really a huge fan of the community and the exercise protocol. And I was very deeply enmeshed in the community. At the time, we connected on the CrossFit forum, right? This was like before social media in 2006 to 2009. The Whole30 started as a 2-person self-experiment in 2009. We had attended a CrossFit nutrition seminar where, they were talking about the potentially inflammatory properties of certain foods, and foods that you might consider healthy, like your whole grains or your low-fat dairy. And after a really difficult Olympic lifting session at CrossFit Boston, we were sitting around, and my original co-founder and I were chatting about this seminar we had attended with some of our friends. And he was like, what if we just did this squeaky clean, like paleo-based 30-day thing? We did it for a month. We kind of took out all of the stuff from our diet that didn't fit this protocol. What if we tried it? And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. Like, let's try it. And we literally started that day. I remember I was eating Thin Mints and I had to give them to my friend Zach. And I was like, fine, let's do it right now. So that was really where Whole30 started. I thought that I might see some performance benefits and maybe some recovery benefits. I was really into my CrossFit performance. But what happened was so unbelievably life-changing. My energy skyrocketed. I no longer needed an alarm to wake up in the morning. I no longer had that 2 p.m. head on desk, like I need caffeine, I need sugar. My sleep got so much better. I was sleeping like a baby. My mood was happier. People were noticed that I was more talkative and I was more chatty. Yes, my performance improved. Yes, my recovery improved. But also, it was the first time in my life that I was able to get off the scale and out of the mirror. It completely redefined my emotional relationship with food and my body. And it was such a powerful transformation that I said to a friend of mine, like, I think I'm going to write about this on my CrossFit training blog. Do you think people would want to do it? And she was like, yeah, I think people might be interested in it. So I wrote about it. And in July 2009, I led about 100 people through the comments of my blog, through the program. And they got equally stunning, transformative, but remarkably similar results. And that was the point where I thought, I think this is something here. And that was really the birth of the Whole30 as we know it today, 15 years ago.
Wow. In 2009, I discovered CrossFit because my parents got sick and they were both diagnosed with chronic illnesses that were lifestyle diseases, essentially. And I remember the doctors telling me, hey, just stay healthy and exercise. And I don't know what that meant, but I had moved to Charleston, and my wife took a hip hop dance class that was like fitness / hip hop, and had a ton of fun, and came home and said, hey, this was the best time. And oh, by the way, this lady and her husband are starting this gym. It's called a CrossFit gym. Like, I think we should go. And I remember going, and we went to like, it was like we were using a gymnasium of a school. And I just remember, I remember like being about 20 minutes in and thinking I was done with the workout. And he's like, all right, now we're done with the warm up. And and I was like, oh my God. But, I was sort of hooked immediately. I got pretty addicted. I don't know if you know that, but I was level 1 certified trainer. I coached for a few years in those early days.
I did not know that, but I love that. I mean, that makes sense, right? CrossFit was booming. It was so popular. CrossFit affiliates were exploding. It was incredible for community. It was incredible for connection. And I think it helped a lot of people realize that they could be athletic. People like me who had never been athletic like a day in my life.
Same. Never. I never had any athletic skills. And it was a great way to sort of, acquire some of those. And also I learned, fortunately the gym owner was so passionate. He was more passionate, I think, about diet and nutrition than he was about the exercise portion. Like, we'd be stretching or something and he'd be walking around talking about food, kind of in between everybody. And that's when I discovered this whole concept of paleo and so forth in those early days, and started making homemade beef jerky to stay away from the Snickers. And so,
thank God for that.
It's very interesting how this all interconnects. And really also to watch the evolution of everyone who was kind of an early pioneer in those days of these concepts that have been extremely transformative for thousands and tens of thousands of people, right?
Yes. Do you still do CrossFit? Because I don't, and I'm curious if you do.
I don't. So I moved to Nashville, Tennessee 3 years ago, and I sort of had an off and on relationship with CrossFit before that, but I was going to a CrossFit gym before I moved to Nashville. I started going back to my original gym, and I was sort of like pseudo doing it. Like I would go in and look at the workout of the day and go, I'm not doing those 3 things. I'm going to go over here and do these 3 things. So I went for the community. I had I developed some really great relationships and friendships. And I mean, heck, half that gym is invested in my brand. And so like just really great humans I love to be around. And so I went for the community and connection, and, I might jump up and do some pull-ups. No, today I actually go to a global gym. I joined, I have a Lifetime Fitness 3 minutes from my house. And so I go there and mostly lift. And that's where I am today in my journey.
I mean, the CrossFit community, I'm still deeply invested in the CrossFit community. I still know a lot of CrossFit gym owners. A lot of CrossFit gyms still do group Whole30s with their members. I may not participate in actual CrossFit classes anymore, but it taught me what I needed to know to be able to then do my own programming going forward. So I still am a huge fan. Yeah.
No, totally. Same. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
So tell me, those early years, between those early years of like taking people through this 30-day reset, if you will, and today, what are the biggest like differences that you see between those 2 timeframes?
I mean, there's so many things that have changed and evolved, right? So in the very first Whole30 was based on the concept of a paleo diet framework. That was sort of the inspiration. That was the nutrition seminar that we had attended. Very quickly on, however, we very much abandoned the paleo eat like your ancestors used to eat framework and really just started digging into the scientific literature on foods that are commonly or could be commonly problematic for to varying degrees across a broad range of people, and not just problematic in terms of inflammation or joint pain and swelling, but problematic in terms of blood sugar regulation, in terms of healthy metabolism and hormonal balance, in terms of digestion and of course, your immune system and inflammation. And then also this component of cravings and your emotional relationship with food. That was of huge interest to me. So we moved away from this concept of a paleo framework into a defined elimination and reintroduction protocol. And elimination diets have been around since the 1920s. They're still often considered the gold standard for identifying food sensitivities. That's what the Whole30 is. But upon making that shift, quickly realized that we needed to involve medical doctors and naturopaths and registered dietitians and licensed healthcare providers in a variety of areas, including mental health care providers, to be kind of mentors and advisors to the program. So that was one big shift that we made, between 2009 and 2012. But the science is always updating. So we're constantly going back and evaluating the Whole30 rules against the current science. The dogmatism with which we approached the framework has changed tremendously. If you had asked me in 2012, why do you eliminate these foods? I would have said these foods are probably problematic for most people. In fact, I probably would have said, you never need to eat grains or dairy or legumes again. You don't need to. You can get everything you need from vegetables and fruit. And these foods are probably problematic for you. So you're better off leaving them out of your diet. And in 2015 or so, by then it was okay, these foods are not problematic for everybody. And if they're not problematic for you, if you discover that through elimination and reintroduction, there's no reason to exclude them from your diet. We want to keep your diet as broad and joyful as possible and allow you to continue to enjoy foods that are culturally significant or family significant or that are just so delicious you don't want to be without them. So that dogmatism to a far more, I think, realistic and practical approach is a really, really big shift. And then, of course, the business has grown tremendously. So, there have been really a lot of changes, but it has been, I won't say a slow evolution, but it's evolved very consistently over the last 15 years. There's never been a period where we've just rested on our laurels and let that be good enough and not tried to improve or add to our resources or question our own hypotheses. We're always doing that constantly.
Yeah. I remember having I called them the paleo police back then, but I had very, very spirited debates with people about things like whether or not you should eat cashews. And I just remember, what are we doing? Are we really going to throw the baby out with the bathwater here? Are we really arguing about cashews here for a second?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes when you're starting when a movement begins, the pendulum swings pretty hard in one direction before it kind of swings back and finds the equilibrium. And I think that's been true in my journey as a founder of a brand that makes the food products. The things that people used to ask me about in terms of ingredients and processing and things like that. The dogmatism has certainly quieted significantly, which I think is healthy.
It's very healthy. Listen, I think when you do something, I just wrote about this actually for the Whole30 blog, but when you do something that is so incredibly life-changing, whether it's an exercise protocol or a dietary intervention or a music festival or a self-care practice, and it really changes your life, you think, A, everybody should do it because it's going to affect everybody the exact same way it affected you. And B, you think that you have to do it that way extremely rigidly forever in order to continue the benefits. It's a very normal process with a variety of different life changes and habits. And then I think as time goes on, you start to realize, okay, everybody has a different lived experience. And also we have to be able to incorporate this in a way that makes sense for our lifestyle and our, time and energy and capacity and finances. And also if I could do 80% and still get 99% of the benefits, why wouldn't I do that? So right. I think it is a very natural evolution as you get older, as you get wiser and to move away from that sense of dogmatism. And I think it's a very good thing to always think about, the decisions you're making and the advice you're giving contextually. I think context and nuance are missing from a lot of conversations.
Totally agree. And I think you're a master at that, by the way. As I follow you and have followed you over the years, you've done just an absolute masterful job of contextualizing all of these concepts that you speak on. So I want to ask you one more question related to this. I want to fast forward to today a little bit. But What do you see? You've built a really large community and people who follow you, who communicate, who just join in. You have a team of people that you work with on the business. You've written multiple New York Times bestselling books. You've sort of been around this world now for the better part of a decade and a half of health and wellness, if you will. What do you see today as the biggest challenge we face broadly when it comes to personal health?
Oh, I don't know if I'm going to get skewered for this, but I think social media is both a blessing and a curse. I think through social media, you can gain access to a variety of perspectives that you may not be able to in your real life. I am following people who have a vastly different life experience than I do. And I'm learning so much from their perspective. And that allows me to diversify my own thought process, to create resources with that kind of diversified view in mind. In that way, it's a real blessing. And I've learned so much, and I've been able to apply so much of what I've learned to the Whole30 to make the program better. At the same time, social media gives everybody a microphone. And what I find is that the people who make the most inflammatory statements and are the loudest and the most confident about them are the ones that tend to get the plays, and they tend to get the attention. And what I'm seeing today, especially, are a lot of influencers tossing around words like toxic and poison and garbage and junk. And they're making things worse. If you fearmonger around the amount of pesticides in conventional fruits and vegetables, studies show that it leads people in underserved communities to buy fewer vegetables and fruit. And that is exactly the opposite of the impact that we want to have. If you fearmonger around the poison that is a natural flavor in a grass-fed jerky product or in your sparkling water product, and people are getting off of their diet soda and changing to sparkling water, and now they're afraid of the natural flavors in sparkling water, you're doing all of us a disservice. So I get really frustrated because I feel like those loud voices making these inflammatory statements get the most attention, and people who are like, no, there's nuance and there's context and it depends. And like, here's how you can apply this in your own life. They're not getting anywhere near, I think, the play that they should for the greater good. So that's my own personal like soapbox / TED Talk right now.
I love it. I love the boldness that you bring with that comment too, because it's I was off social media intentionally for many years. I just recently got back on, and jury's still out whether I stay there. But it's you're exactly right. It's exactly what I've found. I see the same in a parallel world on the food side. There's a lot of greenwashing involved in products as well. And so I share the same frustration, because I think, to your point, it just creates confusion. And then people just kind of like, go back to their old ways or whatever it might be. But it just creates so much confusion, and people don't know, what is good for them, what's not good for them. And again, these trade-offs of like, okay, now I'm going to get hung up over the natural flavors in the sparkling water, but I'm going to go drink my soda. And it's like, oh my God. Again, back to the cashew comment, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like,
yes,
entirely.
Big time. And these kinds of comments tend to come from people who have so much unacknowledged privilege. Like, I, as a working mother, am not going to listen to you, a shirtless, childless dude in the grocery store, talking about how I should feed my kids. I'm not going to do that. And I don't think the single parents and the working parents who follow me should be listening to you either. So I don't care if you cut that or not, but like I said what I said.
No, we should keep it. We're going to keep it. I might go shirtless in the grocery store and tell people what to buy now.
I was joking, like, do I need to go shirtless in a grocery store talking about context and nuance? Like, would that get me more views? Probably for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it would absolutely get you more views. I don't know if they're the right reasons, but it would get it for you. What do you love most about, like, you clearly have a lot of fun doing what you do. What do you love most about it?
Oh, man. I love everything about what I do. I'm one of the very few fortunate people who literally gets to work at my passion and what I feel like is my mission in life. I love talking to people. I love talking to people like you. I love talking to my community. I like hearing their Whole30 stories. I like creating resources that help them succeed. I like listening between the lines to like what their pain points may be and thinking I can help you with that. And then doing that and watching people be successful and be empowered and find their voice. I love that aspect of it. I love watching the impact that we are having on food and the food industry. I love it when brands are changing their formulations to be Whole30 approved. I love it when they're improving the quality of their animal protein to be Whole30 approved. Like, I love that. We are transforming lives one person at a time through the Whole30, but because we've been doing that for so long and our community is so loyal and so fiercely, such fierce advocates for the program, it's we are making change. We're making change in retail. We're making change in manufacturing. And I think that's freaking awesome. I love everything about what I do. I love working with my team and how creative and passionate they are. I love it. I love Whole30. It's been 15 years and I am nowhere near done talking about and serving our community.
Man, the energy you have is infectious over it. I appreciate it. While we're on that, I want to talk about the book. You have a new book launching. So I want to talk about that. And then I want to get into a little bit of your personal life, if you don't mind, towards the end. Well, we won't get to, we'll go as far as you want. So you've got the new Whole30 book that's launching.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me what's different between the original version and this and what you're most proud of.
Yes. So, okay, I wrote The Whole30, which has been our flagship book in 2014, and it was published in 2015. That was the book for how to do the Whole30. It was how to do the program, an extensive FAQ, all of these different resources, and 100 recipes for doing the program. And that book has really stood the test of time. However, that was 9 years ago. And a lot has changed in the last 9 years. So I really wanted to update that book, except that when I got into it and started rereading it, I realized it didn't need an update. I needed to rewrite it from scratch, start to finish. I've gone through a lot of changes in the last 9 years. I got a divorce and a very public business split. I've had a baby. I got a concussion. I've been navigating chronic illness. There have been a lot of changes in my own life. And as a result, the way that I talk to myself has changed. I am no longer the tough love, rigid, punishing, shaming, self-shaming Melissa. I don't talk to myself like that anymore. And so that empathy that I've created for myself, the grace, the compassion, that translates into the way that I talk to people about the Whole30 too. So I look back on the original Whole30 book at some of the things I wrote, and I would think to myself, I would never say it like that today. And that Melissa did the best she could at the time. That language really resonated with me then, but that's not who I am today. And I wanted to rewrite the Whole30 from that more empathetic, welcoming, compassionate viewpoint. I wanted people to know that I know the program is hard in so many ways for so many reasons. And I wanted to give them the most accessible, practical, realistic form of support that I could. And that needed a rewrite. So you'll find that in the new Whole30. We created the plant-based Whole30. So that's like a program we created in 2022 because our community had been asking for it for many years. People wanted to apply the Whole30 framework without any animal protein, either to test how a more plant-forward diet works for them or because they don't eat animal products for various reasons. So we created the plant-based Whole30, and that's featured in the book in print for the very first time with equal weight to the original program, with resources and a shopping list and a meal template and an FAQ and recipes. The science has also changed. We wanted to update all of our rules and recommendations based on current unbiased research, which is something we haven't always been great at, to be honest. So I outsourced the research to a team who looked at it from an unbiased perspective. And as a result, we've made a few changes to the program rules that are small, but only serve to bring more foods back into the Whole30 and make the program more accessible. And then we created 100 all new recipes for the book. We wanted there to be fresh, delicious, original, and plant-based recipes too. So it really is. It's the new Whole30, a totally new era for Whole30. And the book is all new as well.
Wow. 100 new recipes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Did you work with dietitians and other recipe creators on that, or did you do it all yourself?
No, that's not my thing, Jason. You know that. I can cook them, but I'm not creating them. I have a team of recipe developers that I've been working with for the last 4 or 5 years, I think, and they know the Whole30 inside and out. Many of them are Whole30 devotees. It's a nice, diverse group, so I outsource the recipe creation to them, but then I do get to do all the testing myself, which is the fun part.
That's the best part.
Yeah, it is.
I love that part. How long did it take to write?
I mean, it was, call it 8 months of butt in chair time. And I mean, like, that was my full-time job. I really scaled back everything else I did just to write. But the other thing is, I tend to write books. It takes me about 2 years to write a book. And that's because I'm writing something for the blog and I'll look at how it was received and then I'll refine it. And that's the version that goes into the book. I'm doing research with experts ahead of time. I'm working with Dr. Vicky Bhatia, who's a licensed mental health care counselor. I'm working with Eliza Kingsford, who's a registered dietitian, or Clara Nosek, a registered dietitian. I'm working with them ahead of time to talk about concepts and then taking that information and sort of using it in the book. So the whole process is probably 1.5 to 2 years, but the writing itself is just full time, at least 6 months of work.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. What, you've written multiple New York Times bestselling books. Do you still get nervous when a new book is launching?
I mean, a little, I guess. I do get nervous in that I feel as though I want to meet my publisher's goals for the book, but I don't get nervous as to whether or not it's going to be well received by the community. I've written a book. Every time I put a book out, before it comes out, I decide how I feel about it. And I want to make sure that I know this is the best book I've ever written, or it's not the best book I've ever written, but it's a really good book and it's going to be really helpful. I decide how I feel about it so that once it comes out, how people choose to receive it is kind of not my business. And that way I'm not swayed by positive or negative reviews. Also, I do not read my own book reviews ever.
I think that's really smart.
It is.
I think that's really smart. I think it was years ago. I think it was Seth Godin who said he would just absolutely never read a book review that anyone had ever written. And I think that's really, that's healthy. I think it's super healthy.
Book reviews are not for the author. My book is written. I can't change it based on your review. Book reviews are for other readers to exchange their experience of the book. I know that the new Whole30 is the best book I could have put out. I am so immensely proud of it. And I know that for the people who perhaps were turned off by some of the language and voice and tone in the original book, this is going to be such a welcome reprieve. And it is going to kind of expose the program to even more people. And that means even more people are going to change their life with the program. That part I'm super excited about and not at all nervous about.
I love that. I love that. You have to decide how you feel before it goes. I love that. What, practically speaking, if someone like me, maybe with some life experience or some business experience or just a passionate idea, someone like me were to say, I want to write a book on this subject, launching a company, just make that up. What advice would you give me before I got started?
So writing a book and having a book published is actually easier than it's ever been because the self-publishing industry is so big and you no longer are sort of limited by these giant, publishing houses in the variety of red tape that you have to cross in order to get a book published by a traditional publisher. So the first thing I would say is write it. You should write the book. The second thing I would tell you is that the first draft has to suck. I think a lot of people get in their own heads because when they sit down to write, they're like, oh, I have to write and it has to be good. No, it doesn't. The first draft, in fact, cannot be good. It can't be good. It's your first draft. It's gonna suck. It has to suck. And if that takes the pressure off, just get it down on paper. I have edited some really shitty versions of my first chapters, really, really bad. But that's okay because it's a lot easier to take something written and edit it into something that's good than it is to make your first draft just perfect exactly as is. So write the book. You can figure out publishing later and your first draft is gonna suck. And the sooner you embrace that, the easier it's going to be.
I love that. I love the bias towards action and just get going versus trying to, put perfection over that. What do you think about, do you have an opinion on, I agree. I've seen self-publishing. I don't know much about it, but I've seen that. What's your opinion on literary agents? Do you think they're necessary? Or again, back to the self-publishing side, maybe you don't need them if you just want to put it out there.
So I have an agent. I've had an agent since 2013. She is my gladiator in trendy high-heeled sneakers. She is just absolutely amazing and such a wonderful advocate for me. And I do have a traditional publisher with Penguin Random House. So I think if you can submit to agents and you can get meetings with agents, agents are fantastic. They are in your corner. They act as the liaison between you and various publishers. If somebody needs to be the bad guy and say, I don't love that cover or I don't love that approach, they can do that for you and preserve your relationship. They know so much about the industry, about sales, about trends, about other books, about the way publishers work. They're such an incredible advocate. So if you can work with an agent, I think it's wonderful. And I think that's sort of your best case scenario. But there are only so many literary agents, and it can be hard to kind of get in with one. If that's the route you want to go, I would say just get your book in as good a format as you can. Ask someone who knows, hey, do you have like a good format for a book proposal where I could maybe borrow your format, or you could tell me what goes in a good book proposal, and then start sending it to people. This is one of those areas where like you have to advocate for yourself and you have to be kind of relentless about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good advice. I appreciate it. I'm selfishly asking. And also I know there are people that listen that are also interested in.
Yes.
Writing.
Well, you personally can call me after this if you have more questions.
Good.
Always.
I appreciate that. Can we pivot to products? I saw you had some new products that you also launched, like actual like food products that are in stores. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So we recently launched a line of pre-cooked marinated chicken in Costco stores. So we are currently in the Southeast region of Costco. So we're in the Southeast where you are. And we're also in the Texas region with the hopes of getting into all of the Costco regions by the end of the year. As you know, Costco is a very tough customer. They are a very tough customer. They are such incredible advocates for their customer base. And they're so picky about what they bring in because they want to do all the vetting so that Costco customers don't have to make a ton of decisions themselves, right? There's no decision fatigue there. So I'm so proud of the fact that we were able to get into Costco. It's doing incredibly well in both regions. We have 3 different flavors. There's a lemon garlic, an Italian, and a garlic herb that they're rotating through. But it's been a really fun process. I actually went to Atlanta to do 2 different road shows where it's me at Costco, for 8 hours a day, talking to people about our chicken. There's a big banner with my face on it. There's a whole demo team cooking and sampling it. And it was so much fun. I got to meet so many Whole30ers, and I got to hear so many people's opinion about the product who didn't know who I was and maybe didn't even know what Whole30 was, but they loved that it's a high protein, low sodium, really short ingredient list. Like, it's been awesome so far.
Yeah. Did you notice a gap in the market in that type of item being offered to consumers? Is that what pushed you into that direction?
All of the consumer research that we do and all of the consumer research our partners have done have pointed to the fact that protein is the hardest thing for people in general. You know this. Whether you're cooking a meal at home, protein is sort of like the hardest thing. It's like, do I defrost something? How do I cook it? A lot of people aren't good at cooking chicken. They don't want to touch chicken. So we decided we were going to go in with a really high quality, obviously Whole30 values, right? No added sugar, no gluten, no dairy, no soy. There's no preservatives. There's no filler. The ingredient list is so short and sweet, and they're high protein. They're more than 30 grams of protein per serving, which is also something we know our community looks for. And they're ready in 2 to 3 minutes in the microwave or in a pan, which is so good for convenience. And the price point is amazing. So it kind of ticks all the boxes.
You solve that center of the plate problem that people have with the protein. And I think that is the biggest issue. And our culture is so busy. The convenience piece is huge when it comes to solving that. We want more time around the table and less time around the stove. And so I think it solves for that. Well, I'm very aware of Costco and their pickiness. And in fact, I can't announce it yet, but we have something pretty big in the works with them. But it's been an enormous lift. Yeah. And it's been, for us, I think it's been years in the making, and then suddenly it has just sort of come to the forefront. But I will say, as someone who has worked with almost every retailer in the country, they are certainly the pickiest, the most opinionated, and they do the most hardcore vetting of any retailer I've ever worked with.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, our meeting, the initial buyers meeting that I went to for the Southeast region was brutal. I walked away like, oh my God, I just felt like I had been eviscerated, but in a good way, because again, they're advocating for their customer and they ask the tough questions. And it was funny because the buyer came in during the roadshow and it was going we were blowing our sales goal out of the water. And she was like, well, I'm really glad to see that I was wrong about 1 or 2 things I was concerned about. And I was like, high five, me too. But they think very critically, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. And the one thing I've noticed is that they've also anyone I've ever dealt with there, whether it be at the regional or the national level, they all have big tenures. Like everyone's been there for a decade or more. And so they also the people that I'm dealing with understand their customer really well. I've never had anyone critique my packaging, my call outs, the packaging format. I've never had anyone ask down to where's the country of origin for that garlic powder? And I'm like, oh my gosh, let me pull out the spec sheet and show it to you. But they really care. So yeah, that's there's not a better retail partner if you can get the privilege of partnering with them. Yeah. But they're very picky. You're exactly right. And I'm really excited for you. If you're proving it out in the Southeast and in Texas, I think that's just very short. It's a very short turnaround where I think you'll see a bigger rollout. My friend who runs Truff did some tests for Father's Day of Truff's hot sauce in one region. And I mean, within 6 months, the whole country was ordering it regularly and kept it on rotation, indefinitely.
They are incredibly well connected and they do talk. They do move fast. We've had regions where normally you'd have to go for a buyer's meeting and the region was like, no, we'll just bring it in. And that's Perfect. Yay, amazing. Beautiful. Yeah, I love Truffs too, by the way. That's beautiful. So good.
How do you do both? So I actually saw something today and I want you to repeat it. But so you have consumer products that are in retail stores and a customer like Costco who's demanding. You write best-selling books. You have a huge community and you show up for them every single day across your social platforms. You're a mom. You run a team of people. You have all of these things, right? How do you do it? What's the secret sauce? How do you hold it together?
I know. I've talked about this so many times. Well, the first thing is I have an incredible team. So it's not just me. I have a team of 14 people who are doing social media. They're doing email. They're running, product marketing and partner marketing. And you've got a dedicated connection for your Whole30 approved brand if you want to get in front of our community. So my team does so much work and they are the glue that keeps everything together. It's not just me. That's for sure. I've also mentioned, I think a couple times, I am a mom. I love my kid. He's 11, but he goes to his dad's every other week. I co-parent. So every other week, I have an entire week where I don't have to hands-on parent. And that means I have so much more time to exercise and write newsletters and travel for work and take these meetings and hike and catch up on sleep and all of these other things. So I got to point that out because if every other week you didn't have to hands-on parent and you could just kind of do whatever you wanted, I think it would make a huge difference in, the amount of leisure activities and sleep and cooking and everything else that you could do. I'm very structured. I have a very kind of strong morning routine and an evening routine that I think make me very grounded. And then I also love what I do. And it's so cheesy to be like, oh, it doesn't feel like work when you love what you do. And that's not true all the time, but sometimes it feels like that. And that's pretty great. So I have a lot of benefits here.
The transparency, though, that you bring with the idea that you co-parent, I think more people need that. They need to hear because the amount of comparison that happens in people's lives, and particularly when you look at people on social media and you think, man, they've got it all together, or they've got it all, or, they work out and hike and run a business and have a book and all the things. And it's I think it's really important for people to not compare and just know that everyone's circumstance is a little bit different. And to your point about food, there's nuance, there's context, there's all these things. And so, Melissa, we need more people like you being transparent and vulnerable and talking about those things. So I just appreciate the way you show up.
I mean, I think it's really important to acknowledge all of those things. I told someone the other day, my gym membership is a business expense. Imagine, there are all of these little things that go into how I'm able to show up the way that I show up on Instagram. And if I didn't tell you, you might think that I'm just more motivated or more disciplined or, have better time management. I'm no, that's not it. It's because there are all of these hidden things behind the scenes that give me that little boost that a lot of other people don't have.
Tell me about the support of your husband. And how that impacts your business and in your life.
Yeah. I got remarried in 2021. So it's been just over 3 years, but we've been together since 2017. And I didn't date for a year after my divorce. I was divorced in 2015. I didn't date for a year. I just really wanted to spend time with myself and rediscover myself and spend time with my kid and just really focus on me. But when I did date again, I was like, I enjoy my own company so much, and I don't need a man for anything. I don't need a man to help take care of the house. I don't need a man to help take care of the kids. I don't need a man for financial support. Like I am everything I need right now. So if I'm going to spend time with someone, it is because you are additive to my life. And when Brandon and I met, he came from a very conservative religious background where he watched his mom do everything and his dad didn't lift a finger with housework, kid work, and never really even said thank you. That was just like the dynamic. So he came into the relationship saying, I don't want to be like that. Like, I want to show up in equal partnership. And we had to have a lot of very detailed and somewhat uncomfortable conversations about what it means to show up in equal partnership and how that was going to work for our household. But that's another thing, is that I have a partner who shows up equally for childcare and household management, who does not expect me to do all of the invisible labor. I am not the default parent. We split things like pickups and drop-offs. And if I decide that like I'm going to take off on a Saturday for a couple hours, I don't have to ask him to babysit. It's like, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to go for a hike Saturday morning. And he's like, cool, I got this. Like, that is huge. I did not have that in my last marriage. And having it now is like a night and day difference.
Wow. Wow. Are there ever points of contention around like your time and the demands that are on your time, being that I mean, look, you're a popular human. People follow you.
No, there are not, for two reasons. One, I have really good boundaries. And so when I am home and it is family time, it's family time. I'm not also like trying to play a game with my family and like answering email or working. That doesn't happen. And two, my husband is super supportive of my success and my ambition. He is so proud of me. He is my number one fan. So when I'm like, hey, I got to travel because we've got this Costco roadshow, he's like, that's so important for you. It's so important for your brand. Like, go kill it. Go kill it. Do you want me to come with you and take pictures? Like, can I be your videographer? Can I be your photographer? So no, we have great communication and he's just as happy for my success as I am. And so there isn't any contention. It's really great.
I think that's the secret. The secret, sort of like the behind the scenes partners that people don't like. I think they're like, I don't want to say forgotten, because they're not forgotten, but sometimes like the importance of that support is I don't know. No one talks about it. Yeah. And so I think it's really, really important to have that. If you're really going to go out and achieve the things that you want, you aspire to achieve.
Yeah.
You clearly love everything about what you do. And again, I said your energy was infectious, and I'm in the very similar boat. Like, man, I could do this for the next 2 decades, I think, and just keep having so much fun doing it. What's the most difficult thing that you do? What's the hardest part of the businesses that you run?
I mean, I don't want to talk about KPIs. I don't want to talk about budgets. I don't want to do like strategic. I don't want to do like, we just did a whole bunch. We did a 2-week quiet week where we like worked on SOPs. I don't want to work on SOPs. I am very much, if you are familiar with the visionary and the integrator framework, I'm the visionary. I have the ideas and I want to do the ideas. And it's like, when I have an idea, I just want to work on it right away. And that can be very disruptive to the rest of my team. It can be disruptive to the flow. So I've had to learn to sort of tame that back a little bit. But there are definitely aspects of running a business that I don't enjoy and I don't particularly care about. And like sometimes you have to do them, or like me, you have to find people on your team who are incredibly talented and very good at that and like doing that. And you hand over the operations to them, which is great. But like, there are obviously some aspects of it that I either don't enjoy, or it's like, well, it's not my favorite piece of the job, but it has to get done because it's really important. But I'm lucky enough that I'm able, as the years go on, to outsource more and more of the stuff that I'm not good at and I'm not adding value to, which frees me up more to do the stuff that only I can do and the things that I actually am valuable for.
Yeah, same. I find that the minute I give up a task that I really don't enjoy doing and I delegate it to someone who does, like, it improves significantly. The whole thing. The whole thing. If I never build another spreadsheet, like if I never I had a rule at one point where I said, don't send me anything in Excel. Like, make it look nicer and send it to me in a PDF so I can read it. I was like, I don't want to look at it in Excel anymore. So I get that.
Yes. And then there are always going to be aspects of your job like graphic design. There's no reason for me, the CEO, to be doing graphic design jobs, but I like it. So sometimes I will. And like, that's my prerogative too,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still go to sales meetings. I still go do product pitches.
Yeah.
And you're right. And I'm very opinionated when it comes to like packaging design and color, and I can't do any of it, but I'm very, very opinionated about it. And so, the meritocracy in that with my we have a full-time graphic designer who's always like, but you don't understand the design rules. And I'm like, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I do. And she's really, really talented. So thankfully I have her to check me, but I'm pretty opinionated about it too.
Yeah. Well, I get it.
Okay. So I have 2 final questions, and if there's anything else that I missed, please jump in and let's talk about it. But I have two questions that I think are pretty simple. One, for someone starting from zero, if you were to start, if you today you woke up and went, and you had the same idea you had 15 years ago, and you had nobody following you on social media, you had written no books, for someone starting from zero, and they had this idea, and they wanted to build a community online around it, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, that's so hard because I didn't build in this environment, and it's a totally different environment with TikTok and YouTube and in Instagram and SEO and everything. But I would say the principles that I used back then still apply today, which is give a lot of stuff away for free. Give it all away for free for a really long time. That is how you build community. That is how you get proof of concept. That is how you refine your ideas and build a better product. It's how you earn loyalty and trust. Give as much away for free as you possibly can, and then focus on the community. Always put the community first. And sometimes it was so painful to do that because I had to say no to deals that would have been so financially lucrative, and I really needed that. But if you put community first, the people will remember that. Trust is like very hard to build, but once it's there, I find it can be really enduring. And then once you do have something that you want to sell or an ask of people, they'll be really happy to support you because you've taken the time to really get to know them and build that relationship.
Yeah. I think that's really important. Those fundamentals. We get caught up in the tactics, right? Of SEO or like, how do I create content that will, what's my scroll stopping hook that I'm going to use? And it's like, wait, get the fundamentals right.
Yes.
And I think that's really important for people to latch on to.
The third thing I would say, because you just reminded me of something, which is don't worry about what other people are doing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn the basics of SEO or learn the basics of hashtags, but if you are so focused on what the competition is doing, you will lose your true path. You will lose the thing that makes you you in an effort to look and sound and feel and have the aesthetic of everybody else. And then you're just everybody else.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. And we do. I think in the beginning, people do that. They sort of mimic others and think that, that works for that person, so I'm just going to do that. And I think they kind of lose their own authentic voice in that. I mean, heck, I've gotten caught up in that, and it's like a stop all that.
Yeah, me too.
Stop all that. You said something, and I'll this is how humbled I've been in my career. You and I have a mutual, he's probably more of a friend to you, a friend of me to me, but we're fine. But a great example, you are a great example of giving stuff away and for free for a long time before ever making a request. Mark Sisson did it. I think maybe better than I've ever seen anyone do it. I mean, he showed up on Mark's Daily Apple and on that blog and writing about all of the things that he's written about in terms of health and wellness, and one of these pioneers of the whole concept around paleo and, moved into keto and some of these others. But he showed up forever and built a massive community. I mean, I think his email list was in the hundreds of thousands, where he was just sending really great content, creating really great content. And then one day he wakes up and he decides he's going to launch a pantry brand. Yep. And he puts a $12 jar of mayonnaise on the shelf at Whole Foods, and it's the best-selling product that they ever launched. And so, but he built a community for 15 years before he ever like said, hey, I'm going to go sell you something. Yeah. Now that's an extreme example of what you're saying, but I think it's a really good one.
Yeah.
Of someone in our space who gave a lot of stuff away for a long time before he made a request. And then he did. And holy cow, it worked really well.
I will also say this, though, about Mark Sisson, but also about you. I remember a couple years ago when Whole30 wanted to launch our own line of salad dressings that would technically be competing with your line of Noble Made sauces. And I remember reaching out to you ahead of time being like, we want to do this. And I was so nervous about making that call because you have been such a valuable partner. And the last thing I wanted to do was piss you off. And I will never forget when you said, hey, a rising tide lifts all ships, like go for it. If I can be helpful, let me know. If you need help with like store stuff or whatever, CPG is really expensive. Let me give you a couple tips. Those are the kinds of things. First of all, I think that makes you just a genuinely good human. And I can't tell you how appreciative I've been for that kind of not only partnership, but also camaraderie and friendship. But if you can do that with other people in your category, I also think not only are you going to have a much better life and a much happier life, but I think you'll all be more successful in the long run. I don't think you should do that with everybody. But if you can find a few trusted people to be that open and honest and supportive with, I mean, that's worth its weight in gold as far as I'm concerned.
100%. I mean, people ask me every single day, another example of this, people every single day when I go in, we go into meetings or we have retail meetings all the time. They want to know like how we view chomps. And look, and my view is they're effing amazing. Like they're incredible. Like they are busting down doors in a category that, no one has busted down. And they're amazing. They make amazing products. People love their products. Here's some new flavors that I have, and here's how we differentiate a little bit. But, I never go in with the idea that like it's us against them or anything like that. Like they're amazing. And in fact, Rashid and I at least text message each other probably every few weeks. We're checking in. How's it going? We saw this problem in the supply chain. What do you think? What are you going to do with turkey now? We're collaborating.
Yeah.
Because, we're really trying to initiate change against the Slim Jims of the world.
That's right.
The people who are just putting all in we're in the rising tide here. And today, if you look at it, I'll share this with you and then we'll close. If you look at the data in the category for meat snacks, which we've been in for a long time and so have they, only thing driving growth in meat snacks, animal-based protein snacks today are naturally positioned, a la Paleo Whole30, naturally positioned meat stick companies.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Jack Link's, Slim Jim, none of all the kind of pseudo greenwash product, none of that is driving any growth.
Yeah.
The only people driving growth are Chomp's, New Primal, and 2 or 3 others. Like it is incredible what the last decade and a half have done. And I think most of that's because we do believe that. I think at our core, we believe a rising tide raises all ships. And there's plenty of room for all of us in this category. And we should collaborate because we're trying to initiate, change on a very broad level. And there's room for all of us to play.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel. That's how I've always felt. I've never wanted to compete with these. We're on the same team as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I can verify that you say that, but then you also back that up with action, which is so greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Melissa, we could talk for 3 more hours and nonstop, but you're a very busy person. I'm not going to keep you any longer. I do appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining me. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. Let's do that. We'll get that offsite going in person. Let's do it.
Looking forward to it.